Let's get right into it. You think you know the Geico Gecko, that charming little reptile with the perfect English accent. But you don't know the first thing about the creatures that came before him, the forgotten, unsettling, and frankly terrifying prototypes that were too bizarre for television. We're talking about a profession that no one talks about, the role of the Geico mascot handler, a title reserved for the brave few tasked with bringing the insurance company's vision of a reptilian spokesperson to life. Imagine being a creative director in the late 90s, scrambling to invent a mascot that could compete with the likes of Tony the Tiger, and instead of a friendly animated character, you end up with a series of creatures that look like they've just witnessed a terrible crime. The initial idea was to use a puppeted decision so baffling in hindsight, and the first version was less of a mascot and more of a nightmare-inducing garden ornament. It had a hollow, dead-eyed stare and a limp, rubbery body, and its job was simply to look vaguely at the camera while an off-screen voice desperately tried to sound convincing. This first puppet was so universally rejected by focus groups for being unsettling that its work was scrapped, and the puppet itself was supposedly put into storage, never to be seen again. Then came the early CGI attempts, creatures that existed in that unsettling valley of graphics where something is almost lifelike, but fundamentally wrong, with jerky movements and a plastic sheen that made it look like a toy from a budget horror movie. The Geico mascot handler at the time, a guy named Julian, whose official job title was simply Reptilian Spokesman Director, recounted in a later interview that he once had to manually animate the early CGI gecko's eyelids, and he said, "It felt like he was trying to make a soulless automaton appear empathetic." The weirdest part is the voice. That now iconic English accent was a last-minute creative gamble. The initial voiceovers were all in a generic American accent, and they were so flat and unconvincing that the company decided on a whim to try an actor with a proper British tone. They thought it would make the gecko sound less aggressive and more sophisticated, a choice that ultimately created one of advertising's most recognizable voices. Julian's salary for this absurd, creepy job back in 1999 was a reported $55,000, which, adjusted for inflation, is roughly equivalent to a little over $100,000 today, a truly princely sum to be paid to get a puppet to look less like a demon and more like a friendly talking lizard. The mystery gets even weirder. There's a persistent urban legend among former Geico employees that the first puppet, the one so creepy it was locked away, was known internally as the Oracle. The legend claims that on particularly dark and stormy nights, Julian would hear faint, raspy whispers coming from the storage room where the puppet was kept. He claimed it was just the building settling, but he always looked over his shoulder when he said it. Could you imagine a job like this existing today, where the success of a multi-billion-dollar company rests on whether you can make a creepy puppet or a clunky CGI reptile seem friendly? It's a good thing we have the polished, animated version we know and love today, because the alternative is something out of a low-budget horror film. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.